Welcome to the podcast for all the marbles. This is a conversation in which we talk to entrepreneurs, we talk to people that are making extra effort, we are talking to individuals that stand out. For All the Marbles is in partnership with Marbleism, and the objective of the show is to talk to people that dream big, yet start small. They fight hard, they lose some, but they win more. These are real stories of people chasing it all and collecting all the marbles along the way. Thrilled to be able to introduce a very new friend, Sara Murray. Sara is the founder and CEO of Mermaid International. She focuses on sales training, position your product as a profit center. She does keynote speaking. She has a terrific podcast. And we're going to be sharing some insight as to what motivates her. What does she like about being an entrepreneur? Why did she start it? And how can she be so darn successful? Sara Murray, welcome to the show.
Bart, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
When we talked a couple of weeks and we met in person weeks ago, started talking a little bit about why did you choose to start your own company? It's been a little over 3 years, almost 4 years, and you had worked for people before, really exceptional companies. And I always like to start the questions with this. Why did you choose to start and go out on your own?
It is always funny to trace the breadcrumbs back, even like looking beyond like the jobs that you had before you started corporate, your big girl jobs. I worked at a country club starting at 14, and that's where I learned hospitality. Like you trace the breadcrumbs back and look. But I think what really fuels me and energizes me is connecting with people. And I've always been in sales roles, and I could always get to the top guy who was in charge of signing the check. And it was one of those things where so many people would tell me consistently, man, I wish you could teach me how to network like you can. I wish you could teach me how to get to those decision makers. Enough people say that to you, you start to realize that it's a strength. And it just got to a point where I was at an age where I thought, if I don't do it now, I maybe never will. And so I took the leap. And it was one of those things, if you're good at sales, and I'm based in Los Angeles, it's hard to find good salespeople in Los Angeles. There was a job security there. So if I tried it and I failed, I could always get another job. And so that was the catalyst. And I heard someone, I believe her name was Susie Moore, so I want to quote her correctly, but she talked about just taking part in a larger conversation. And the idea of leaving my corporate role and expanding into new industries, that gave me the opportunity to take part in larger conversations. And I get to meet a lot of inspiring people like you and have these types of discussions. And that is really what energizes me and fuels me. And I think that's the trickle-down effect that impacts the people that are in my orbit too.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Was there anything that pushed you that was the button that said, tomorrow I'm going to do this? Do you remember? Or was it a gradual process of probably should try it, probably should try it, probably should try it, probably should try it?
There was some corporate politicking that didn't land in my favor, and that I would say was a catalyst for it. But I will tell you, Bart, you'll appreciate this because I know you like gratitude. I was being groomed for this job, and then I didn't get the job. Someone else, a different manager, plugged someone else in for it. People were upset about it, and I was upset. But what I did was I sat on the beach. I live in Los Angeles. I took my journal out to the beach and I made a list of every reason why I was grateful that happened to me or that situation happened. And it became very clear, like in every one of my bullets, it was the path to now you can start your own thing. Now you have the green light to go. Like this is the universe pushing you this direction instead of that other direction. And I feel as I get older, I get pretty good at going with the flow. And so when things happen to you that aren't aligned with where you think you're going, instead of looking at it like a stopgap or something that's happening to you, it's okay, this is happening for me. Let me look at what's over here. And I have to tell you, I'm so grateful that happened. I'm so excited I took the path that I took, and then I'm going with the flow. And I just keep going with the flow and it keeps working out. So I got to keep doing it.
That's a very professionally mature and emotionally mature approach when things happen to you. Just the other day, I was at the gym and I couldn't find my car keys. And I'm like, son of a gun, I'm ready to go home. I had a great workout. I did some work at the gym. Where are my car keys? And I found them, but it was about 20 minutes later.
Ooh.
And during that time, I had to walk around the gym looking for them. And I cannot tell you how many people were kind and gracious and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I help you look for them?" And then other people said, I just bought this air tag that I put on them and it helps me find them right away because it happened to me before." And all of a sudden, it was an opportunity. It was this forced conversations with strangers to be able to look for something. And therefore, I finally thought about it as it was an okay thing. I wasn't late for anything. I was just ready to go. And did that happen for a reason? Maybe there was going to be, God forbid, a truck and something flew off the back of its bed, or my tire would have been blown if I had been 20 minutes earlier. You never know. So I love hearing that conversation, Sarah, that you were able to stop and think, what good can come of this? Were you always that type of positive thinking type of person?
Definitely. And that's also a funny reflection as you look back, because when I left my job, I've always been positive, optimistic, really chatty and outgoing. And I feel very blessed to have that mindset on life. Not all the time. Obviously, sometimes things piss you off. I can get pretty assertive on situations sometimes. But for the most part, yes, very positive. And it's funny because when I left my last corporate job, I would get texts from my colleagues saying, "Wow, we really miss your positivity in meetings. Your energy is like your absent energy is felt." And it's really interesting because that never struck me as a strength before. And
Mhm.
now that I work with my clients, one of the things that I realize I do, because I work with a lot of sales goals and we're helping people get to multi-million dollar deals, and there needs to be that abundance mindset. And I think a lot of people have this like lack mindset or this fear mindset. And it's no, go for the big goal. We can get you there. But it's funny because now I realize part of what my value was in corporate and now my value in my consulting firm is that positive mindset and the fact that things are possible. There's plenty of opportunities. We can get you to your goal. We just have to be thoughtful about how we get there. And so I think that I feel very blessed. That's always been the attitude. I've had a nice, happy life. So why wouldn't that trickle down?
And share, we talked about it last time you and I chatted about the influence of your family, of your parents in creating that positive attitude. Can you share with our listeners the environment in which they nurtured you and supported you?
Sure. I think it's so funny. One of the little breadcrumbs I look at is my mom worked for Delta Airlines growing up. She worked at reservations out of the Salt Lake City office for 27 years. She worked really hard for our family, and we got to fly for free as employees of Delta Airlines. And because of that, though, you fill in the empty seats on the plane. So we don't have a seat assignment. You never got to sit together as a family. So as a little kid, I was always sitting next to strangers on the plane. And my parents, we had to be good manners, of course, because we were representing Delta. So that was, I was about to say beaten into us, but really ingrained into us. And when you sit next to a stranger on the plane, and I learned really early on that if back in the glory days of flying, you would get meals and food, and I'd be looking at the person next to me not eating their chips. And now as an adult, I understand why they weren't eating their chips. Everyone's watching their waistline. But as a kid, I'd lean over and say, "Excuse me, is there any chance you're going to eat your chips?" And it just ended up being an icebreaker and opened the door to that conversation. So I always joke that's where my love of sales came from, is the ability to just talk to people and nothing bad happened. If they wanted to keep their chips, they would. But from my mom and dad's perspective, they're both middle children. So they always joke that's where their selflessness comes from. They're just used to serving others, but very thoughtful, very kind people. Like I know my mom will always pick me up from the airport with a bottle of water. And so that just becomes a habit that when I pick someone up from the airport, hey, here's a bottle of water, here's some snacks. It's those types of habits, but very gracious parents and grandparents. Like my grandpa would do Meals on Wheels every Christmas and he'd make us go with him, me and my brother and I, and just those types of positive things. I think you learn habits from the people you're around, and the people that raised me had very positive, healthy, selfless habits. And so I definitely think that helped, of course.
Are you a confident person?
Yes, maybe to a fault.
Are
I got
you
to work on it.
are you a cocky person?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
Sometimes, but I would definitely say more confidence versus arrogant or egotistical.
All right. And automatically you said, yeah, sometimes to a fault, confident. How so?
Sometimes I realize so I went to a dating event. I'm single. I went to a dating event last Friday, and one of the things that you did, they paired you off on groups, and people had to share their first impression of you. And I was in it was sort of a meditating dating event. So I was in leggings and a sweater. Like, I was not dressed up. I was in my sneakers. Like, I was there to have a relaxing Friday night and see what happened. And I had multiple people say their first impression of me, wow, you're so professional. Wow, you're so confident. And sometimes when you get those compliments, it's almost like human nature to feel like you want to shrink yourself, because we are bad at accepting compliments as a
Mhm.
human race. I think it makes people uncomfortable. So even I just did it to you. I self-deprecated when you asked me if I was confident. So it's something we all need to work on, but I I don't know if it's a bad thing. When I do my workshops, one of the things we talk about is bridging the gap. And we have a tendency to put people up on a pedestal. So our bosses, our high value clients, our high value prospects, like we put them up on this pedestal, and everyone's down here trying to jump up on that pedestal with them. And what I teach in my workshops are, you don't need to take the person off the pedestal. You just need to find a way to put yourself on it with them. And we have a multi-step framework on how you can add value, how you get on the pedestal. But
Mhm.
one thing that I've learned is, because I've jumped up on the pedestal so many times and landed, that I think has really instilled that confidence in me. And that's what we talk through in my workshops, is how to embrace your authenticity, understand the tools that you have and the strengths that you have ingrained in you as a person, and then use that to build confidence to go jump on that pedestal, approach those clients, get that meeting, get that interview, get that introduction.
Yeah.
That's really where you can't do it without confidence. And it's something that is a skill that can be practiced and finessed.
Yeah, Sarah, there's a lot of different sales experts that I've had on different podcasts, different shows. And one gentleman talks about the element of, his name is Matt Easton. He's huge on TikTok and social media and Instagram, a good guy. But he talks about, you shouldn't, when you follow up, you shouldn't say, I'm just following up. Happy Thursday, happy Friday. And can we talk? And I haven't heard back from you. And I'm pushing it up to the top of your list. And whenever he says that, he makes his voice pitch a little bit higher without authority. And his point, very similar to what you just shared, just because you are selling something to someone, a high value customer, doesn't mean that you are below them, beneath them, anything. They're not more important than you. You're just in different roles at different times. And he shares this element of, does it make sense? Tell me a little bit more about your business, Sarah. I want to see if it makes sense for us to be able to work together, to see if it makes sense for us to have the conversation. This is what I bring to the table. I know it's good. We have all the areas to be able to substantiate it. Great. Just want to make sure I understand your needs a little more to see if it makes sense for us to continue the conversation. Needs to make sense for both of us. And I thought, what a lovely way of being able to frame it in a way in which, and it goes back to my Ritz Carlton days. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Just because you're a billionaire checking in at a hotel and I'm a front desk clerk doesn't mean that you're any more important to me. We just have different roles.
Right.
I'm a gentleman serving you as a lady or a gentleman, and we're even that way. It's not subservient. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love, there's a lot of different threads I want to pull from what you just shared.
You pull one thread.
I interviewed recently for my business. I interviewed the general manager of the Hotel de Paris in Monaco, a man named Olivier Thomas. He's now the general manager of the London OWO Raffles Hotel. And in this interview, he brought up a phrase that you just hit. He said, "We are at your service. We are not your servants."
Yeah.
And I think about, a lot of my background is in luxury sales, and most of my clients sell to the ultra high net worth individuals, whether it's luxury hospitality, luxury residential. My background's been in that luxury space. And it is so funny because sometimes I just feel like a hillbilly from Utah, Bart, and that's when you're selling to luxury clientele, you have to get over that disconnect, that if you don't come from that world, that doesn't mean you can't add value to that world. And
Mhm.
you said it exactly right. Like, the title doesn't matter. My biggest framework that I use all the time, I teach all the time, I say it every day, is ABAV, always be adding value. AB, AV. And so any type of interaction you have with anyone, whether it's the doorman, the valet guy, or your ultra high net worth client that you're talking to, you have to come from this mindset of how can I add value to the other person? And if you're coming to the conversation with value versus an ask, if you're adding value, then it's a lot easier to feel confident in approaching that conversation, approaching that sale. And to your earlier point of the follow-up emails, hey, just following up, hey, making sure you got my email. Nobody reads those. I deleted 6 this morning that I have never read any of the email threads because I don't know the person and
One
they're
of those,
asking for
one of those was mine, Sarah.
no, I don't think it was. I was
I'm kidding.
careful.
Kidding.
Oh, shoot.
Kidding.
But I think that's the point. And one of the things that we talk about in the ABAB framework is the emotional bank account concept. So if any of your listeners aren't familiar, the emotional bank account was coined by Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's this concept of emotional deposits and withdrawals in relationship building. And so what salespeople try to do, I'm saying sales reps, not sales professionals, but sales reps will try to make a withdrawal from an empty bank. So they're reaching out to a prospect asking for something instead of finding ways to connect and add value. And there's so many ways that we can add value that don't cost any money, that help us differentiate ourselves from all the other people in the inbox making the same ask. And so a big part of this mindset shift is just you have to be adding value.
Yeah, and one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine is when people ask to be connected on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to say yes, because you never know. How could I help someone? How could we collaborate? How could we communicate? Partnership. Great. Let me say yes. But the worst thing is the next email comes, and I'm sure it's probably automated. It's, can you read this link, this research paper? This is my bio. This is what we provide. And we help hotels. It just happened yesterday. We help hotels use their initially non-revenue space to be able to get revenue. So it's renting out the bar, it's renting out the restaurants, it's renting out part of their pools. And I'm like, not at a hotel. I can't help you. Or you say yes to a connection, they send you 14 links and ask you if you want to start a sandwich franchise. No, you don't know me. You don't have the right to be able to, from my perspective, to even ask me things like that when you don't even know me. It's a shame.
Now they have a negative deposit in your bank too. So you could have positive deposits and negative deposits.
Yes. And what advice would you have? And I want to get back to your entrepreneurism after this. What advice would you have when people are reaching out that way? And do you think they're doing it because they think it's the right thing to do? Their bosses are telling them this is what you need to do. You need to send out. What do you think? What do you think is happening?
I mean, I think everyone is not everyone, but the average person is very guilty of doing activities. It's almost like you're just spinning your wheels to feel like you're being busy. And I think a lot of those email sequences are just automated. And that's my pet peeve too, because sometimes I'll respond to an automated email sequence and get no response. And then I get the third email in the sequence. It's like, dude, I already responded and said I'm ready to move forward. And you I just think it's so rude. But I know that it's from a scalability standpoint, that's what people are doing. So I think that it's lack of creativity. And I think it's people sitting at their computers, not wanting to pick up the phone or not having the ability to pick up the phone in terms of what their company structure has organized itself. But there's so many ways to differentiate yourself that adds value versus just asking in that email cadence. So I think it's lack of knowing alternative ways to do it. I think it's just unintentional ignorance.
Yeah. And I know we're talking just briefly about automation, and sometimes there's good automation, and sometimes there's bad automation. And I still owe you a deeper conversation about Marblism,
Yeah.
Marblism. And what is unique with them, the founder came up with, just briefly, 7 AI employees to help entrepreneurs like me, like you, do our business better. And you feed it tons of information so it knows your writing style, and it puts draft responses there for you that are probably more thoughtful than most people have time for. and you review it, you understand it, you can change it, but you hit send and it saves you hours and hours. So I do believe that there's automation like Marbleism that
Totally.
can be really good.
And Bart, I'm so happy you brought that up too, because I had one of my corporate jobs, we had a very strict, like if this email didn't require a response, you were not supposed to respond. A thank you email. And I learned some, I don't know if it was bad or good habits, but it was just company culture to not respond thank you, because then that person has to stop what they're doing to read an email that just said thank you. So the attitude was, this is implied thanks. And so sometimes I do think that I probably owe people responses that I just mentally, I'm like, okay, got it, on to the next. And so I think that a draft response would be something that would be really valuable to me, because you do want to
Yeah.
respond and acknowledge and close the loop on things. And that's something I'm guilty of.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting, Sarah. If I look at, I don't know if I need to pull it up right now, but maybe I will. There are certain things that I would only respond to as thank you.
Mhm.
And thinking about it, putting myself into the recipient's shoes, walking a mile in the customer's shoes, I don't know if it's as meaningful as it should be, because it comes across, probably if you give a thumbs up, like I love a thumbs up reaction, meaning you got it with my team, my colleagues, I got it. Great. I know that. But then could there be more? And I'll just share this one with you just very quickly. This was a group that I spoke to right before I met you. And they were just talking about, the email was right, grateful so much. Oh, I want to see if I can get a couple of copies of the slides that you presented. Lovely. My first response would be, okay, here's the link. Just make sure you credit. Most people don't. But what this AI tool through Marbleism did, thank you so much for the kind words. I had an absolute blast at your event. What an incredible group of people. Really excited to hear more about the feedback when you get it. Here's the final presentation deck for you. Share it with anyone who might find it useful. If you need a different format, let me know. Thank you again and have a great Thanksgiving.
Super nice and memorable.
Yeah, nice, memorable, because I fed it me.
Yeah.
I fed Marbleism the tool to understand what my response could be, and then they made it better. And isn't that the value of AI? I want to back up just a little bit, Sarah. When you were a child traveling on Delta, you sat next to strangers. At any point, maybe early in on the stage of traveling, were you ever not wanting to sit to strangers? Were you uncomfortable sitting next to strangers? Because I think the answer is going to reveal even more about you than.
No is the answer. And I think it actually proved to me that people are good. Like I had one
Yeah.
time I was sitting next to my brother and we were in the middle 4 seats. So our parents were way behind us. My brother and I were in the middle 2 seats and there's strangers on either side of us. And we had our trays down and we were eating the meal and it was a piece of steak. And I didn't cut my steak very well. I was like 12, 11. I don't remember, young, but didn't cut my steak very well. And I started to choke on the plane. I'm choking in my seat and I like hit my brother and I make the motion and he's, you're choking? And I said, I nodded and he goes, you are not. And I like slapped him. And then he jumps up because he's little at the time and he slithers out of his seat and he jumps up and yells back to my parents, Dad, Sarah's choking. And so many people, Bart, got out of their seats to try to come help me. And there was, and this story gets gross, there was no way to get to me. So I ended up having to just reach down my throat and I pulled out the piece of steak and it was terrible. And like everyone's crying, but it was really cool to see so many people jump into action. And the woman next to me, English was not her first language, but she was very kind and empathetic and I'm crying and she's trying to console me as the adult next to the kid. But it was one of those things where I heard a bunch of interesting stories from people. It got me very curious about others. I think that for the most part, everyone was pleasant. And even the ones who weren't pleasant, Bart, it didn't matter because it didn't change who I was. Like I'm still friendly and happy. You can just be grumpy. That's fine. I'm happy I don't have to interact with you on a regular basis. But it almost reminded me that people are good and I get a kick out of people. It's a big passion of mine. So let's make a business around it.
I think that's a great perspective, Sarah. And thank goodness Thank goodness, one, that you're okay, that you didn't choke too much more. Thank goodness that you're fine. And thank goodness that you were exposed to people at a young age. I think that makes all the difference in the world. Being put into those situations and still being confident because you knew you could handle it. You could talk to strange adults when you were 12 years old, 11 years old. Why is that any different now to talk to someone your age or younger or older that happens to be a CEO of an organization? You're just people,
Yeah.
and you're confident enough in who you are and what you bring to the table and how you do it that it's a natural conversation.
The more you engage with the world, and I'm saying the world in terms of educating yourself, learning new things, talking to different people, traveling to different places, you just are compiling data points. So now you have this arsenal of stories and reference points. So if you meet someone from Nova Scotia, you could say, "Oh, I just met someone from Nova Scotia and they said XYZ." It just gives you more data points the more
Mhm.
you interact with the world. And I think it increases empathy. It makes us recognize our humanity a little bit more. And I think that's going to be more and more important. I think that AI is amazing and I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the future brings. But from a sense of how does this help offload things from our plate so we can focus on the human to human things that only we can do as humans versus software, machines, etc.
Yeah, by making people feel a certain way. That's the differentiator. Yeah, the confidence level. I presented also to a group at a workshop, and I asked the question, are you comfortable in outreaching, making outreach and prospecting? And one brave young lady said, I feel like I'm bothering people, and I don't feel like I'm very good at it because I have this inwardly sense that I'm bothering them. What would your response be to a person like that?
I think if you understand there's a couple of different answers.
I just went 7 of them.
Okay, I'm going to give you 3. Um, we'll see. But I think one of the things that is really helpful is to look at how does your product or service help your prospect's business model. So a lot of times we get stuck in focusing on features. We need to think about how does that feature make their life better, make them money, save them money, impact them personally in their specific role. So if you know those answers, then that's mindset shift 1, making sure that you understand the business value and the business impact that your product or service delivers. And then piece 2 is if you're coming from a place of adding value, if this really does truly help that person in their role, then they need to be aware of it. So you're not pushing anyone to buy, you're just opening the door and letting them know that this is an option available to them. And you need to take it one step further and try to find the human piece to it. And that's really where this concept of ABAV becomes ingrained, because there's a lot of different ways to stand out and show this other person that you see them, you recognize them, you want to work with them. And I'll give a small example. There's a woman who I know. She used to be the vice president of international marketing for a very well-known brand that we wear on our feet and our bodies, but she's been self-employed for 7 years. She has a marketing firm. She also has a podcast. And as do I, as do you. You know how hard it is to get your podcast built up. And so one thing that really helps is reviews on Apple Podcasts. I'll ask your audience, if you have not yet done so, go leave a review on Bart's podcast. It's really easy. It takes 2 seconds, 5 stars, write a comment. And this woman on LinkedIn wrote that she has this podcast. She's making an ask from her network. Please go listen and rate and review her podcast.
Okay.
And I happened to look at her podcast. She had 2 reviews when she made that post. I look at the LinkedIn post. It has 150 likes, 37 comments that people wrote on her LinkedIn post, and not a single one of them went and did what she asked, which was just to review the podcast and leave a comment. And so I did. She sent me a note saying, "Thank you so much for this." And it boggles my mind that people don't find these opportunities of zero cost touch points to add value.
Yeah. No, so you added value to her. Hopefully, you're going to be a guest on her podcast, and hopefully vice versa, if not now, sometime.
And I think it's more of just Probably.
Maybe.
Now if I need to ask something from her, I'm putting ask in quotes, but if
Sure.
needed something from her, I have enough deposits in her bank account because I've been finding ways to add value. But
Yeah.
I think every single time there's this app that I really like, and I guess the app has poor reviews. It doesn't have a high score on Trust Advisor. And
Mm.
now ChatGPT isn't recommending the app because of Trustpilot. The reviews aren't great. And so they just said, hey, if anyone's enjoying the app, would you go leave a review on Trustpilot? Sure. This takes 30 seconds. So I try to look for those types of opportunities,
Yeah.
even if there's no ulterior motive for me, like what can I get out of it? It's just you're constantly putting this out there. And then that impacts your personal brand as someone who continues to add value. It keeps people in mind. This woman and I we have some complementary services that don't compete. So I could see a way where we collaborate in the future. But at this moment in time, that didn't matter because I'm just out planting these seeds left and right. And it's easy and it's free. And it just helps create that reputation and that personal bank account arsenal that I can pull from.
Yeah. And I think a summary of what you just shared, it's putting things out there not to get back. And I share this story often. There's a friend of mine in Hawaii that he started a business, and he started it for three main reasons. One, he didn't want to work for anyone. Two, he wanted to make tons of money. And then three, he wanted to help people. And he realized that after 2 or 3 years without those priorities, he was not successful, right? I don't want to work for anyone. I want to make tons of money. I want to help people. When he switched it to the point where I just want to help people, right? That's my number one goal. I want to help people. Then the money came. Then he got to continue to not work for anyone else. Then the accolades came. Then the referrals came. And it's just our mindset. And you'll laugh at this, Sarah. This was a couple of years ago, a very well-known keynote speaker at an event, and I was one of the concurrent speakers. I guess I was more of a breakout. And the gentleman was on stage, and it was 2,000 people, and mine was 400 people. So I was a little bit jealous. I wanted to get onto that big stage. And I went up after I heard him speak, and I gave him my business card. And I said, nice to be able to hear you speak. We follow each other on LinkedIn, on social media. Congratulations. I really liked your message. Here is my card. In case I can ever help you with anything. That's what I said. And I walked away, and he was a very kind gentleman. Walked away, and I realized I gave him the card for the wrong reasons. I gave it to him because I wanted something. I went up to him later, found him again at the conference, and I said, I have a different card to give you. This one comes with good intentions. And I told him, first one I gave you, I wanted you to post about me because you have more followers than me. I said, here's the second card, same contact details. But I just wanted to thank you for doing what you're doing. I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you, but I am happy to spread the joy of what you are doing. And it just allowed me to breathe a little deeper because I went into it with the right intentions. Going to the point, Sarah, of what you were talking about, that you're gathering these touch points. You're gathering information to be able to observe from different people, to speak to people that went or going to Nova Scotia, to speak with hospitality folks, to speak with high tech related folks. It doesn't matter. You're just gathering all this information. And when helpful, when someone needs it, you can pull it back out.
Totally. I think that's the other piece. I have this massive network of people now because I'm genuinely interested. I want to learn more. But then if I work with a client who needs a marketing consultant, I know someone, and then I'm a referral partner. So I always say the holy grail of the emotional bank account is to put a deposit into someone's bank that builds their business or helps their career journey in some way. And there's just so many ways to do it. And you can connect people, you can put people in touch with each other, you can promote their materials, you can leave a review on Amazon for their book. There's just so many ways to do this, and it doesn't cost any money. And most people, I'm going to use your language, most people don't do it. And referencing back to that LinkedIn post, I think there's an epidemic of people not listening to. And so it's all she wanted was for people to go write a review for her podcast. And instead, If they're commenting, that's fine, but that's not what
She
her
asked.
task was. Yeah.
No. And have you ever sent an email to someone saying, can you tell me, do you have this to share? And should I send the invoice to you? And they just respond, send the invoice to me. I asked you two questions. You
Mhm.
might be moving a little too fast.
Oh,
That's okay. But let me
all,
subtly ask you again.
all the time. I
What
have
would
an
that-
allergy to cinnamon. I'm allergic to cinnamon. And I wanted like a special coffee drink the other day. And I asked the guy, there were all these funny names of the coffee. And I said, I'm allergic to cinnamon. But besides that, what do you recommend? So I get a drink. It
Oh,
gets dropped off to me 2 minutes later. And there's cinnamon all over the top of it. I'm like, you guys. And the guy felt horrible. But it's one of those things where it happens all the time. And so if you can be someone who just listens and follows direction and shows up, like that's half the battle to differentiate yourself.
it is half the battle. And something that you had done, we were talking before about abundance. And Sarah, when you and I had talked prior to this podcast, there's a lot of things that we do that are similar, like sales training, yeah, workshops, yes, keynote speaking, yes, podcast, yes. There's a lot of things that we do similar. But I liked you, and this doesn't happen very often. And I'm learning to be less critical of people, but I liked you immediately because of your approach, because of how you approach, yeah, truly how you approached me in very an authentic, sincere way. And that reminds me that there is abundance in the world. And there are, man, it's so interesting. There's an organization, it's an association, you would not know the name of it. And they are far away from here. And they just signed a contract for August of next year. They are paying more because their budget allowed and the things that I'm delivering, they're paying more than probably a Fortune 100 company would pay. My point is that there is abundance in the world. I want to get back to something that you did that did not cost you any money, Sarah. And I appreciated it so much because it reminded me of things that perhaps I had done before in the past. After I got done speaking, you were second or third row. You sent me 2 or 3 photos, I think through LinkedIn, saying, I know it's probably not always easy to get photographs of you on stage. I'd like to sit in the first couple of rows so I can get good photos. I really enjoyed your message. We should talk more, but here's a couple of photos for you. You didn't need anything. You didn't want anything. You're just planting kind of seeds of, okay, there's nice people in the universe. And you were saying thank you to me. And I wanted to say thank you back to you by, oh, we got to get you on the show, Sarah. We got to get you on the show. And it works that way, doesn't it?
It's just not that hard if you come from a place of just giving without expecting anything in return. And I had a client of mine who called me, this was a couple years ago, but one of my first like fun anecdotes. And I was working with a team in Boston, team of men in construction. I have a lot of male clients. And he calls me and he said, Sarah, I love the emotional bank account concept because it references money. And he goes, in the past, I would never give someone the time of day unless they gave me a purchase order. He goes, but I'm at this architecture firm. He sold a construction product and I'm at this architecture firm and I hear the woman mention she's going on vacation and I hear your voice in my ear. And I said, where are you going on vacation? And he goes, and we just BS'd for 20 minutes about her trip. I didn't talk about my product once. I get back to my office and I had a project from her in my inbox that she wanted to collaborate on and a second email asking for me to come in and present to her team of 12. Because I couldn't believe it worked. I'm like, it just isn't that hard. And I think about if we can just show up. I share a story of cold calling a firm in person. And I meet with the gal and I said, hey, I'd love to get on your presentation calendar. She says, great. We are booked out for 1 year. I said, ooh, okay. When I get home tonight, I'll send you my deck and I'll send you my details and I'll see you in a year from now. And she goes, it might take me about a week or 2 to get back to you because I'm going out of the office. And this is where like listening skills and being interested in others comes into play. I said, oh, are you going anywhere fun? She says, yeah, I'm going to Hawaii with my husband. We've never been. I'm like, great. Have a great trip. I'll see you next year. So I get back to my desk. I sent her the email with the job, with the presentation description. And then I sent her a second email that said, hey, I don't know if you like to read books, but there's a book called Honolulu and a book called Molokai. They're non-historical fiction. I think you'd enjoy them. She got back to me that night and I was on the presentation calendar 2 months from that day instead of a year. And it cost me no money. It just was like, oh, let me just add some value, have a good trip, be a normal person. And I think we get so in our heads in sales land and like our goals and our priorities that we get a little clouded on these opportunities to create these human connections. And that's what's really going to make you stand out.
Just be kind, realize that there's abundance in the world, always add value, be confident, be yourself, don't be cocky, not show up. Listen.
Do what you say you're going to do. Yep.
It's not right. Do what most people don't do. It's not that difficult. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. 2 last questions for you, Sarah, if you're okay on time.
Yeah, please.
What has been the hardest part about being an entrepreneur?
I think it's patience and trust. It took me a lot longer than I thought. I would say year 3 has been like magic year. It's been so much fun. Every year has been fun, but I had to sacrifice a lot more than I thought I would. And I almost think that not realizing how hard it was going to be was a blessing, because I maybe would have never taken the leap, but I'm obviously grateful that I did. But just really being patient and believing in yourself, that's, I think, the hardest muscle to continue to practice.
And that's what everyone has expressed on these podcast interviews so far, that it's going to take longer than you thought it would. But if you believe in yourself, if you bet on yourself, take the leap and the ground will appear before you even land. Wonderful. That was the most difficult part of being an entrepreneur. How about the greatest part of being an entrepreneur? 3+ years.
Oh man, I think one of the first sales training I did in person was in Austin, Texas, to a group. And I felt really proud of myself. I built the curriculum. I got buy-in. I guys closed the deal. My mom dropped me off at the airport. She gave me a ride to the airport and gave me a huge hug. We're proud of you. And so I get to the training and we had the first 90 minutes. We took a break. And I went into the owner's office and I said, how do you think it's going so far? And she looked at me and she said, you are changing their lives. And then I had a different person also on that same break. We were at the beginning of the day. She said, you've changed my life already. I'm thinking this and this are different things I've never done before. And it really was, when people say, find your why, I get the point of it, but sometimes the why doesn't appear right away. It takes time to find the why, and the why might change and shift. But that to me was something I wasn't prepared for, that compliment, because I just wasn't expecting it. And now that's making me show up a lot different, because I have something that helps people sell more effectively, which increases their personal income and the company's revenue. I am adding value if I reach out to someone, because I know how to make you millions of dollars. So why wouldn't I reach out to you? So I think that changing people's lives and finding the why, that was a fulfilling piece that I wasn't expecting. That has been just a gift that keeps giving.
Wonderful. And thank goodness, 3+ years into it. So glad that you made that leap, Sarah, because you're helping so many different people. I want to share a couple of details with you. Sara Murray, Murray, is Murray, and Sara is Sara. Terrific website, by the way, saramurray.com. Very prominent and active on LinkedIn. Sara Murray Sales is want to be, I guess, your handler name, Sara Murray Sales. Also, podcast host, Prospecting on Purpose. Congrats to your success with your podcast as well, and continuing to help people. So glad that we had a chance to be able to talk. Last word to you, Sara Murray.
Thank you so much, Bart. I really appreciate being here. And I want to encourage the audience to really just look at what makes you special and find those connection points with others. And that's what's going to be something that continues to spread, like your own personal brand, and make it easier to reach out to others. So Bart, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation.
You are welcome, Sara, and glad we are connected. That's the purpose. This was meant to be.